Are you searching for purpose of life? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.
Hello and welcome to Found by Shalom World. I'm your host from Ireland, Katie Ascough. On this show, I talk to guests about their journey into the Catholic faith and how that inspires the work they do now. Our guests are dedicated followers of Christ, fighting for his church in the 21st century. They produce podcasts, write books, and importantly, are raising their families in the joy and truth of Catholic life. Today we are joined by Lisa Cotter, Catholic author and speaker. Lisa is currently working on her book about the feminine genius while also completing her Master's in Theology at the Augustine Institute. Lisa is going to share her journey of faith with us, some insights on being a wife and mother, and some exciting updates on her work in ministry. I hope you enjoy our conversation with Lisa, and welcome to Found. Lisa, it's so great to have you with us. Thanks for joining.
I am so glad to be here, even if it is virtually, like everything.
I know, like everything this year. And yeah, hopefully for not too much longer, though. Please, God, we get back to a normal life soon. I think everybody would like that.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lisa, I've seen you speak at a couple of different conferences, and you get up on stage, and I think you've told your testimony probably like 1,000 times at this stage, but I don't know if I've ever heard your testimony from start to finish. So I just want to invite you to go into that today. How did you become Catholic?
Yes, well, I have kind of the basic conversion story, if you can even call it a conversion, the basic testimony. I was raised in a Catholic family, went to Catholic school my whole life. And in junior high, I kind of got that itch of like, oh, church is stupid. Why do we do this? And, wanted to rebel a bit. But by the time I got to high school and really later in my high school years, I started going on some retreats and conferences and mission trips. And those experiences of just stepping away kind of allowed a crack in my heart for grace to pour in. And so that's really where, just small steps, one at a time, the Lord was calling me. And then when I got to college, I went to a great Catholic college, had a solid community of friends, and it really just solidified that, yes, this is the truth, this is good, and this is what I want to give my life to. And so it was just kind of a slow process, but here I am still today.
Wonderful. So you were raised Catholic then? You were raised Catholic and I guess have always stayed in your faith? Would that be right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in junior high, early high school, there were some of those, just moments of rebellion, but nothing that really made me question God to the point of not believing in him.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what about choosing your faith for yourself? It sounds like it was a series maybe of steps where like just slowly but surely things were just getting confirmed for you. Or was there maybe like one moment where you chose your faith for yourself? Because I think anyone who's raised Catholic, like I'm the same, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers have also been, raised in the Catholic faith. But there always comes this time where you have to choose it for yourself. It's like, okay, I can't just keep going to mass because mom and dad tell me to. Like I actually need to make this something I do for me and God.
Yeah, that's a tough one to say. I don't know if there was one like definitive moment. I do remember having a thought at one point, I think it was early on in college, and thinking, am I really going to do this Jesus thing for the rest of my life? Like, is this going to be
forever?
Like who I am always? Yeah. Or is it just, well, I have great friends and we hang out and do Jesus things together. And so, but maybe once I'm done with college and I leave that community, maybe I'll go a different path. And I remember quickly after that thinking, no, this is it. Like I'm doing this for life. So yeah, I mean, I don't have like a spark moment really.
Sure. And sometimes that's like even more real. And I think that's probably most people's stories. It's not one moment, although some people do have those stories. But for a lot of us, And I think myself included, it's like, yeah, it's a series of steps. I also want to hear about your vocation. I was reading this blog that you posted. I think you called it your love story or something like that, about how you met your husband, Kevin, and you talk about how you approached this relationship differently to relationships in the past. And obviously it went pretty well. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you bet. So my husband and I actually met in high school. So when we were like 17, and we
Wow.
became friends, and then we started. Yeah, I know it seems crazy because I'm like, I have known him for well more than half of my life at this point, which is crazy.
That's beautiful.
But yeah, it is. It's a real gift that we had this time where we were just friends. And I remember I always admired him, but I also looked at him as the guy who was clearly out of my league. I was like, that would never work. He would never like me. So I just kind of just, rested in that friendship with him. But then our junior year in college or university, we were, so his two best friends, roommates, were dating my two best friends. So the six of us hung out a lot, which, I mean, you can kind of see how that looked, right? And so in his wisdom, yeah, people were starting to wonder. So Kevin, seeing this and thinking it through, approached me and very gently said, "I'm so glad we're friends." And I was like,
oh, just what you wanted to hear.
Just what I wanted to hear from the guy I admired and thought highly of.
Yeah.
But, I was like, well, I guess that's not surprising. Like, I'm not super surprised here. And what was different here in this moment is, in the past, if a guy had told me that, I would have kind of taken that as like a challenge. Like, oh, like you don't like me? Like, what's not to like about me? Like, give me a couple weeks.
I'll show you.
I will change your mind. Right.
Yeah.
I will show you. It was a challenge, But for Kevin, though, I remember very clearly thinking, I don't want to manipulate this situation. I don't want to try to become something else for him to try to get his attention. If he's going to like me, I want to know that it's for me, like for who I am as I am. And it really changed, I think, the trajectory of the way that I approached our friendship after that, because I was just comfortable being myself and didn't want to try to become somebody for somebody, which is what I would do in the past. I would kind of try to conform to be what I thought this guy wanted me to be. And it actually worked because several weeks later, a couple of months later, he came back to me and said, we've been spending a lot more time together, and I actually really do think that there's something here, and I'd like to take you out on a date. And he took me out to dinner, sent me flowers the next day, asked if he could take me out again. I mean, it was a very like classic old school story. And I'm so grateful for it. And I'm so grateful that I didn't try to manipulate the situation, but instead just continued to do what God was calling me to do and be who I was. So it was a really great start to what is now 15 years of marriage.
Lovely. And I love that story. I think it's such a good lesson for all of us to take away. Like, if we just trust in God and actually don't try and manipulate the situation or get our way in it, like, it's always going to turn out better. Like, what are we thinking? God definitely knows better than we do. And I've heard so many great stories about couples meeting, and it's because they've like either just like they've been trying to date for so long, and then they finally are like, okay, God, you can have control of this. And that tends to be when they meet each other. It's like, God, you're just so funny. Like, he has a sense of humor in these things, I think. Definitely. I also want to hear about your life as a mom. Do you have 4 kids at this stage? Is that right?
That's right. Yes. We are, let's see, we span 14 to 2 age-wise.
Amazing. I'm sure that's a very busy house. And I know for a lot of Catholic families, this is something they try to do. And often, it's a little bit chaotic, but, we're all doing our best. But how do you bring the Catholic faith and especially prayer into your home? Like, do you pray with your kids every day? What do you find works for you guys?
Yes. So we are very blessed to be in an amazing Catholic community. That our kids are at a fantastic Catholic school. And so, I mean, the first thing I would say is the community aspect of it has been so critical for us passing on the faith And especially during the seasons of Lent and Advent and Easter, those high seasons, we have a very intentional family prayer time every night where we read scripture together, where we do a decade of the rosary, and really try to journey through those seasons in a very thought through and intentional way. But even in ordinary time, we'll gather in there to pray, and you'll see my kids in there. We have a section of saint books, and they'll be sitting on, there's a couch in there as well, and they'll be sitting there reading the saint books and grabbing their rosaries. And so it's just kind of, I think, having that dedicated space in our home. And I know not everyone can have a whole room. We're very blessed to have that, but even just like a family altar, just one place where it's kind of known, like this is the place. Of course, the Lord is everywhere, but to have a dedicated place that we can come together to pray, I think has really blessed our family.
Yeah, I think that's such a good idea. And like my spiritual director would be laughing right now because he's always telling me exactly that. Set aside a space in your home to pray, whether it's like a prayer corner or, as you say, a room. Like that would be ideal. I think that's just so good. And it sounds like, yeah, you have something as close to a chapel as it can be, just obviously without the presence of the Eucharist. But that, yeah, I love that. And hopefully that's something that we all can do. For me, it's usually a prayer corner or like a prayer chair. if I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, it definitely works. I think just having that dedicated space is so important. It's not where you're eating your cereal or doing your work all day. It's like a space for prayer, which I think is really, really helpful. I also want to hear about your ministry, Lisa, because I know you and your husband, Kevin, you've been involved in a lot of different things. You had a podcast for a while, really successful. You've both been very involved in Focus. What are you guys doing now? Where has God led you to next?
Yeah, that's a great question. So after we did 11 years in Focus as a missionary family, absolutely loved it. I thought we were going to die in Focus, to be honest. It was like a Pope job. Like I thought, this is it. We're never leaving. But a newer ministry actually approached Kevin. It's called The Amazing Parish. They work with parishes, in particular with priests, really to help them to be better pastors and to gather a leadership team with them. So they're not alone as priests. They're not feeling this weight of running a parish by themselves, but having a community who is working with them as Father is leading and praying with them and developing a really strong foundation for the parish so they can go out to evangelize and do what the church is calling them to do. And so they had approached Kevin and said, we really feel like you would add a lot to this organization. And we really want to interview you and see if there's a fit. And so we spent like 4 months in conversation with this organization and eventually had a great confirmation that, yes, it was time for us to take everything we had learned in Focus and use it to help build up a new apostolate. And so Kevin's there. He's at the Amazing Parish now and just loving it. It's been an incredible experience. We're so grateful for the work we get to do serving priests. And I have been continuing to still speak. Obviously, it's a challenge in COVID, a little different. But my exciting thing I'm working on right now is actually a book. I'm working on a book on the feminine genius. And it's something that has been in my mind for like 7 years, I want to say. And so I'm finally putting it all down on paper and creating a resource that will be coming out in the form of a book in about a year or so. And that is what I've been really pouring into right now.
Wow. And why the feminine genius? Why a book on that?
Yes. Well, so it's interesting, so much of the trajectory of my life has been revolved around Focus. And so for Seek 2013, I was asked to give a talk on authentic femininity, which to me was hilarious because I had never given a talk on that before. And they wanted me to speak to all the women at the conference, which was about 4,000 women. And
wow, no pressure.
I was a little intimidated. No pressure. Yeah. And I was intimidated by the topic because I myself didn't feel like I was particularly this exemplary Catholic feminine woman. I didn't know what that was supposed to look like. And I was actually kind of afraid of what it was maybe supposed to look like, because what if I was doing it wrong? And so I prayed about saying yes to the talk and determined that, this is something that I really should explore and understand. Like I'm going to be a woman for the rest of my life. And I want, if there's something important to that, if that's meaningful, then I want to understand what that is. And so I challenged myself to start to dive into the church's teachings, to look at what did Pope St. John Paul II say about femininity? What does the Bible say about manhood and womanhood? And I was really surprised at what I was discovering and really honestly thrilled. It was very freeing for me to realize the gift of my femininity, not the stereotypical what the world says a woman should look like, but what from the beginning of time God intended for woman. And so that's something that has really been revolutionary in my life. So it's something that I am very passionate about sharing with other women because I want them to experience that freedom and understanding what it means to be a woman and the gift of femininity.
Sounds so good. I cannot wait for that book to come out. That's really exciting. And we have to wait a year. That's almost unfair, but I know these things take time, so I'm sure it'll be more than worth it. Can you tell us about your ministry, Made to Magnify? I've seen what you do online. I know your tagline is something like "Be saints, it's worth it." So what is Made to Magnify all about?
Yes, it comes back to Mary's Magnificat and just that she says, my soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord. Like each of us, we were called to proclaim the greatness of the Lord. We're called to magnify the Lord. And so whatever that looks like in your life, whatever stage you're in, whatever place you're in, we talked about this a lot in our podcast that my husband and I did that we have since had to retire. When baby 4 came along, we just couldn't do it anymore. But fair really enough. Just yeah, fair enough, right? But really just this knowledge that like we are each called in our lives to glorify the Lord, to magnify him, whatever stage or place we find ourselves in. And how do we do that? I like to be very practical. That's just who I am. I'm type A. I like order. I like processes. Those things make me probably too happy. But I like figuring out like, okay, how do we become fully alive in who God created us to be? And obviously you can't, bring about grace. You can't force God to give you grace. It's not like, well, if I do these 10 things, then I'll become holy. It's all a gift from God. It's all the Holy Spirit pouring into you, and he can give and he can choose to hold back for whatever reason at certain seasons. But what can we do to be more receptive to the Lord so we can glorify him with our lives?
So good. So good. And how do you find yourself balancing ministry with family? Because I think a lot of people as involved in mission as you and Kevin are, like that can be a struggle sometimes because ministry is so important. And you guys are doing great work and saving souls. And it's like, how do you not just pour everything you have into that? But then you also have this beautiful family, and family always comes first. So how do you guys find a way to balance both those things?
Yes, that is, the struggle is real right there. As the years have gone on and as our kids have grown more, and as our family has grown, it has definitely been a conversation we're constantly having because I can't do it all. I actually don't want to do it all. I just want to do what God wants me to do. And so I find that there are seasons, and I know this is such like a buzzword way to talk about it. But for me, what I've discovered is I have to be holding on to what the Lord is calling me to kind of loosely, just like this, like not so tight, like, well, this is who I am and this is what defines me. And if I can't do this, then I'm nobody. For me, it's okay, Lord, if there's time, then show me, give me the grace to do it when there's time. But if there's not, then give me the grace to do what's most important and what you're calling me to. And so, in this season of COVID, my book actually was supposed to be done this time last year. I was supposed to be wrapping it up, but I got a little behind with just the holidays and things. And then COVID hit. And I knew that I could not care for my family the way I was going to need to in those months, and also be dedicating so much of my brain space to this book. And at the time, I was taking grad school classes. And so it just, something had to give. And so the book just got, so the book just got shelved. And right now grad school is shelved. I just have to pick and choose. I can really only do one larger project at a time in order to still be the wife and mother that the Lord is calling me to be. And I found when I try to cram it all in, when I try to, take the grad school class and work on the book and deal with the chaos of COVID and say yes to all these little side projects, I'm just unhappy. Like I just am worn out. And so I found that if I just let go of what I think my life should look like and allow the Lord to lead me, there's so much more peace. There's so much more calm for everybody.
Yeah. I think that's Yeah, it's something we can all learn from as well. I think in today's world, especially, we're so bad at saying no, and just we keep saying yes and yes and taking on more and more responsibility, and all of a sudden we're overwhelmed. So I think that's really good. And what you say about seasons and just pacing yourself a little bit. Tell us about grad school, though. I didn't realize you were studying again. What is that about?
Yeah, so I'm at the Augustine Institute, which is based here in Denver, and they also do distance learning. So it's been a real blessing because I've been able to go in for most of my classes, but when I can't, then I can watch virtually, which has been incredible. But I am on like the snail pace track. You get 8 years to finish your degree. I will probably take all 8. Most people do it in 2. But that's okay with me. I take one class at a time. Like I said, I'm taking this semester off because I know that if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to finish up this book. And this book just needs to get done because it's been a slow process. But it's a master's in theology. I've had the opportunity for 2 of my classes to dive deeply into the feminine genius, into women of the church and our history, and understanding what has the experience been like for women in the church in different times and in different cultures. And it's just been a huge blessing to be able to continually study. And I mean, to be honest, I'm actually glad I'm on the 8-year track because then I really get to savor every class. And that has been such a joy.
Wow. Well, it sounds like while you are pacing yourself, I'm sure there's a lot going on, and that's just so great to hear. And can you just tell us again, where can we find all of your resources? I know you also have a book, and we didn't get to talk about it, but the dating detox. Like, where can we find all these great things that you and Kevin are doing?
I have a website. It's magnify.com. It's not updated very well currently.
That's okay.
But that is like the holding place. But I'm also on Instagram. That's probably my favorite place to be.
And thank you so much for your time, Lisa, and just all the work that you're doing, all the different ministries, and really looking forward to this book coming out.
Oh, thank you so much, Katie. It's been such a joy to chat with you, especially because you have a lovely accent. It just makes me very happy.
Oh, I'm glad. Well, my mom's from Texas, so if I'm in Ireland, people think I sound American, and if I'm in America, I sound Irish. So I guess I get the best of both, but I'm glad you like it.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, have a great day, and God bless.
You too. God bless.
We were here with Lisa Cotter on Shalom Worlds Found. Until next time, take care.
The work of Shalom is an essential part and a powerful part of the work of evangelization, of promoting the objective of sharing the good news of the gospel, the joy of the good news of the gospel, and its promise of salvation in this life and beyond death in the new life of the risen Lord. Its evangelization of culture and civilization is a most important objective for the people of God and the church right around the world. In this 21st century, when the human family is battered by so many forces of change, of uncertainty, forces which seem to threaten and menace hope, the hope of the risen Christ and of the good news of the gospel is something which has to be shared not only between individuals, but with communities of peoples right around the nations of God's earth. May the Lord bestow his blessing on the work of Shalom, on all who are associated with it, and also indeed on all those who through their charity and kindness support its most important work.